Sing! Our guests need some entertainment, and I heard you have a voice. A wealthy woman, dressed in designer clothes, points a microphone at a visibly pregnant maid in the middle of a crowded Christmas party. The guests laugh, watching with smug expressions as the trembling maid looks down, humiliated. What the arrogant wife didn't know was that her husband was about to ruin her party in the most shocking way possible. But before we dive into the full story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. You missed a spot. Again. Olivia Williams pointed at the marble floor. Do I need to show you how to clean properly? Sarah Johnson felt her back ache as she bent down with her cleaning cloth. At 6 months pregnant, simple tasks were becoming harder each day. No, Mrs. Williams. I will fix it right away, she said, wiping the already spotless tile. Good. Remember, we have important guests coming for the Christmas party. Everything must be perfect. Olivia walked away, her designer shoes clicking on the marble floors of the Bel Air mansion. Sarah stood up slowly, one hand supporting her pregnant belly. She watched Olivia disappear down the hallway and took a deep breath. Working as a maid in this house for 3 months had been harder than she expected, but she needed the money now more than ever. What no one in the house knew was that Sarah Johnson wasn't her real name. She was born Sarah Williams, sister to Mark Williams, the wealthy man who owned this mansion. 15 years had passed since they last spoke. 15 years since their parents died in a car crash, leaving behind a bitter inheritance dispute that tore the siblings apart. In her small room at the back of the mansion, Sarah kept an old photograph hidden under her mattress. It showed 2 smiling children, her and Mark, building a snowman in front of their childhood home. That brother was nothing like the serious businessman who barely noticed her now. The Grand Williams mansion stood in the exclusive Bel Air neighborhood of Los Angeles. From her window, Sarah could see perfect gardens surrounding the house. Inside, expensive furniture filled every room. This was the empire Mark had built with his tech security company. Sarah, dear, you should rest a moment. Grace Anderson, the 68-year-old housekeeper, appeared with a glass of water. The baby needs you to take breaks. Thank you, Grace. Sarah accepted the water gratefully. But Mrs. Williams will be upset if she sees me sitting down. Grace had worked for Mark since before his marriage to Olivia. Her kind eyes showed concern. 5 minutes won't hurt. Sit down, please. Sarah lowered herself onto a kitchen chair. You're too good to me. Nonsense. Looking after a pregnant woman is basic human decency. Grace busied herself preparing dinner. How are you feeling today? Tired. My back hurts. Sarah sipped the water. But I'm fine. You know, Grace said carefully, there's something familiar about you. Have we met before? Sarah nearly choked on her water. No, I don't think so. I'm from Ohio originally. This was a lie. She and Mark had grown up in California, not far from this very neighborhood. But 15 years and the hardships of life had changed Sarah. Her once short, rebellious haircut had grown into long brown waves. Her face had thinned. No wonder Mark hadn't recognized his teenage sister in the 30-year-old pregnant woman who now cleaned his home. Sarah! Olivia's sharp voice made both women jump. Yes, Mrs. Williams? Sarah stood quickly. Why are you sitting? The dining room needs to be prepared. The flowers for the Christmas party arrive tomorrow, and everything must be spotless. Olivia crossed her arms. And Grace, Mark will be home early today. He wants his favorite dinner. Yes, Mrs. Williams, both women answered. As Olivia left, Grace shook her head. That woman treats everyone like servants. We are servants, Sarah reminded her gently. There's a difference between employing someone and treating them with disrespect, Grace said. Sarah returned to cleaning, carefully avoiding any movement that might strain her pregnant belly. Her husband Tom had died in a construction accident 6 months ago, leaving her alone and expecting their first child. The job at the Williams mansion had been a desperate choice, but also a chance to secretly observe the brother she'd lost touch with. At 6 o'clock, Sarah heard the front door open. Mark Williams walked in, his tall figure dressed in an expensive dark suit. At 42, his dark hair showed touches of gray at the temples. He rarely smiled these days. "Good evening, Mr. Williams," Sarah said quietly as she finished dusting the hallway. Mark nodded briefly, then paused. For a moment he looked at her more carefully, a slight frown crossing his face. "How are you feeling?" he asked suddenly. Sarah blinked in surprise. It was the first personal question he had ever asked her. "I'm fine, thank you, sir." "Make sure you don't work too hard in your condition," he said awkwardly, then continued toward his office. Sarah felt her heart race. Did he recognize her? No, that was impossible. She'd been careful to use her married name, Johnson. She'd changed so much from the angry 15-year-old girl who had screamed at him during their last fight. Later that evening, while cleaning near Mark's office, Sarah heard raised voices. "I don't understand why you keep that pregnant woman around," Olivia was saying. "She's slow and will be even more useless when the baby comes." "She needs the job, Olivia," Mark answered tiredly. "Have some compassion." "Compassion doesn't clean our house properly," Olivia snapped. "The Christmas party is our most important event of the year. I won't have it ruined by staff who can't keep up." Sarah moved away quietly, but not before hearing Mark's firm response. "She stays, Olivia." End of discussion. That night in her small room, Sarah took out the hidden photograph. She traced her finger over young Mark's smiling face. Where was that boy now, hidden somewhere inside the serious businessman who lived in this mansion? The next morning, Sarah was dusting the hallway when she noticed Mark watching her from his office doorway. She was singing softly to herself, an old habit when she was alone. "You have a nice voice," he said. "Thank you, sir," she replied, embarrassed at being caught. Mark tilted his head slightly. "That song, it sounds familiar." It was a lullaby their mother used to sing. Sarah quickly changed the subject. "The decorators asked where you want the Christmas tree placed, sir." "Ask my wife," Mark said, but he continued watching her with that puzzled expression. "Have we met before, Sarah?" She kept her eyes down. "I don't believe so, sir." That afternoon, Mark sat alone in his office, staring at an old family photograph he'd pulled from his desk drawer. It showed his parents and his teenage sister Sarah before the car accident that killed their parents 15 years ago. The inheritance dispute afterward had been ugly. His sister, only 15 at the time, had been rebellious and angry. Mark, focused on building his company, had handled everything poorly. They'd lost contact completely after she left her last foster home. The pregnant maid had triggered something in his memory, something about her eyes, her voice when she sang. Mark picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Daniel Cooper Investigations," answered a gruff voice. "Daniel, it's Mark Williams. I need you to look into someone for me. One of my household staff, Sarah Johnson. I need a complete background check." "Any particular reason?" Daniel asked. Mark looked again at the family photograph. "Just a hunch. I need it as soon as possible." "I'll have something for you in a few days," Daniel promised. As Mark hung up the phone, he heard laughter from the main hall. Olivia was showing her friends the Christmas decorations while Sarah served them tea. He watched through the doorway as his pregnant maid carefully balanced the heavy tray, her face tired but determined. For a brief moment, she looked up and their eyes met across the room. Mark felt that strange jolt of recognition again. Who was Sarah Johnson, really? The day before the Christmas party, Mark received a sealed envelope from Daniel Cooper. But with 75 guests arriving the next evening and Olivia demanding his attention for last-minute details, he placed the unopened envelope in his desk drawer. "I'll read it tomorrow," he told himself, unaware that its contents would change everything. The morning of the Christmas party arrived with a flurry of activity at the Williams mansion. Mark stood in his office, glancing occasionally at the desk drawer containing Daniel Cooper's unopened envelope. There simply wasn't time to read it now. "Mark, where are you?" Olivia's voice echoed down the hallway. "The caterers need approval for the champagne selection." Mark sighed and closed the drawer. The investigation into Sarah Johnson would have to wait. The mansion transformed throughout the day. Workers hung crystal decorations from the ceiling. Caterers prepared elaborate food displays in the kitchen. Fresh flowers arrived in dozens of arrangements. Sarah worked harder than anyone. Despite her pregnancy making movement difficult, she polished every surface, arranged chairs, and helped in the kitchen. Her back ached constantly. "Sarah, please take these napkins to the dining room," Grace said, noticing her discomfort. "And then sit down for 5 minutes. You're pushing yourself too hard." "I can't rest, Grace. Mrs. Williams keeps checking on everyone." Grace frowned. "That woman would work you until you collapse." By 6 o'clock, the mansion glowed with hundreds of lights. Outside, luxury cars began arriving one after another. Sarah stood by the front door alongside other staff members, taking coats from guests who barely looked at her. "Remember, smile and be invisible," the head butler instructed the staff. Olivia greeted each guest wearing a sparkly red dress that probably cost more than Sarah would make in a year. Mark stood beside her, smiling politely but looking uncomfortable. "Darling, the Andersons are here," Olivia called out, waving to a couple entering the foyer. As the house filled with guests, Sarah moved quietly through the crowds with trays of champagne. She overheard fragments of conversations about vacation homes, private jets, and stock portfolios. These people lived in a different world. "Excuse me," a deep voice said. Sarah turned to find Robert Taylor, Mark's business partner, standing beside her. "Could I have one of those?" he asked, pointing to her champagne tray. "Of course, sir." Sarah offered the tray. Robert took a glass but continued looking at her with curiosity. "You're new here, right?" "I don't recall seeing you at last year's party." "Yes, sir. I started 3 months ago." "How are you finding it?" Sarah was surprised by his interest. Most guests ignored the staff completely. "Everyone has been very nice," she lied. Robert smiled kindly. "That's good to hear. Make sure you take breaks. You shouldn't be on your feet too long in your condition." Before Sarah could respond, Olivia appeared. "Robert, stop chatting with the help and come meet the Petersons. They're considering investing in the company." Sarah watched as Robert was pulled away. At least one guest had shown her basic human decency. As the evening progressed, Olivia drank more champagne than she served. Her voice grew louder, her laugh more forced. Sarah noticed Mark watching his wife with a pained expression. "More champagne, Mrs. Williams?" Sarah offered when she passed Olivia's group. "Of course. It's a party, isn't it?" Olivia took a glass, then looked Sarah up and down. "Though you wouldn't know anything about proper parties, would you?" Sarah kept her face neutral. "Would you like me to bring some food as well?" No, Olivia waved dismissively. Then she paused, tilting her head. "Wait, I heard you singing earlier when you were setting up. Grace mentioned you used to sing in a church choir or something?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "A long time ago, yes." A dangerous smile spread across Olivia's face. "How interesting." Sarah quickly moved away, a feeling of dread growing inside her. She found Grace in the kitchen. "Mrs. Williams was asking about my singing," Sarah whispered. "Why would you tell her that?" Grace looked confused. "I mentioned it to the florist when you were humming yesterday. Did I do something wrong?" Before Sarah could answer, another server rushed in. "Mrs. Williams wants everyone in the main hall right now. She's making an announcement." When Sarah entered the crowded main hall, Olivia stood in the center of the room, tapping a spoon against her glass. The room gradually fell silent. "Friends, I have a special surprise for our entertainment tonight," Olivia announced, her words slightly slurred. Her eyes scanned the room until she found Sarah trying to blend into the background. "Sarah! Come here, dear." Sarah froze. 75 pairs of eyes turned toward her. "Come on, don't be shy," Olivia insisted, waving her over. Sarah had no choice. Moving slowly, one hand protectively over her pregnant belly, she approached Olivia in the center of the room. "Everyone," Olivia announced loudly, "our maid apparently has a hidden talent. She used to sing in a church choir." Guests murmured with curiosity. Some looked embarrassed by the situation. Olivia grabbed a microphone from the nearby piano player and thrust it into Sarah's trembling hands. "Sing something festive for us, Sarah," Olivia commanded. "Consider it part of your job if you want to keep it." The room fell silent. Sarah stood frozen, utterly humiliated. She could feel tears building behind her eyes. I don't really sing anymore," she whispered. "Nonsense. Grace says you have a lovely voice." Olivia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Silent Night would be perfect, don't you think? Unless you'd prefer something that matches your situation." She gestured toward Sarah's pregnant belly. Some guests laughed. Others looked away uncomfortably. Across the room, Mark watched with growing tension. Something about the scene triggered a memory. A young girl singing that same Christmas carol years ago. His sister. Sarah realized she had no choice. With shaking hands, she raised the microphone. "Silent night, holy night," she began softly, her voice trembling. Despite her fear, Sarah's voice was beautiful, clear and pure. But tears streamed down her face as she sang, making the moment painful to watch. Some guests recorded the humiliating scene on their phones. Others whispered to each other. Olivia watched with smug satisfaction. All is calm, all is bright. As Sarah continued, Mark felt a jolt of recognition so powerful he nearly dropped his drink. The voice, the way she held herself, suddenly the resemblance was unmistakable. He turned and walked quickly toward his office, heart pounding. "Round yon virgin mother and child." Sarah's voice continued behind him as Mark unlocked his desk drawer and grabbed the envelope from Daniel Cooper. He tore it open, hands shaking as he spread the contents across his desk. The first page contained a clear statement. "Sarah Johnson, born Sarah Elizabeth Williams, is confirmed to be your biological sister." Mark sat heavily in his chair, staring at the documents. Photos showed Sarah's journey over 15 years, her marriage certificate to Tom Johnson, newspaper clippings about his death in a construction accident, her financial struggles afterward. "Holy infant, so tender and mild," Sarah's voice drifted from the main hall as Mark flipped through evidence of his own failure. His pregnant sister was working as his maid while being publicly humiliated by his wife. "Sleep in heavenly peace." The final note of Silent Night hung in the air as Mark heard Olivia's voice ring out again. "That was lovely. How about another song? Maybe something more upbeat?" Mark grabbed the report and rushed from his office. In the hallway, he almost collided with Grace. "Mr. Williams," Grace said urgently, "I need to tell you something about Sarah." "I know," Mark interrupted, holding up the papers. "She's my sister." Grace wasn't surprised. "I suspected as much. The resemblance to your mother." "Why didn't you tell me?" Mark demanded. "It wasn't my place," Grace replied. "But we need to go now. Your wife is—" They heard Olivia's cruel laugh echo from the main hall. "Come on, Sarah, don't be sensitive. It's just a bit of fun." Mark and Grace hurried toward the sound. When they reached the main hall, Olivia had her hand wrapped around Sarah's arm, preventing her from leaving. "I didn't say you could go," Olivia hissed, her fingernails digging into Sarah's skin. "Let her go, Olivia." Mark's voice cut through the room like ice. Everyone turned to look at him standing in the doorway, face tight with anger. Olivia's grip loosened in surprise. "Mark, darling, we're just having some entertainment. Let her go." Each word was clear and final. As Olivia released Sarah's arm, Mark stepped forward, the investigation papers clutched in his hand. He approached Sarah, who stood trembling, one hand protectively over her belly. He looked at her face carefully, truly seeing her for the first time. "Sarah," he whispered. She met his eyes, confusion giving way to understanding as she noticed the papers in his hand. Mark turned to face the silent crowd of guests. "This party is over." The stunned silence that followed Mark's announcement lasted only seconds before whispers erupted among the guests. Mark stood firmly between Sarah and Olivia, the investigation papers still clutched in his hand. "What do you mean the party is over?" Olivia asked, her voice rising. "We have 75 guests here." Mark ignored her. He turned to Sarah, his voice softening. "How long have you known who I am?" Sarah's tears continued to fall. "I always knew. That's why I came here." Olivia stepped closer, her face flushed with anger and alcohol. "What is happening? Mark, explain yourself." "I need to tell everyone something," Mark said, his voice carrying across the now quiet room. He looked directly at Sarah as he spoke. "This woman isn't just a maid. She's Sarah Williams, my sister." Gasps filled the room, Olivia's face drained of color. "That's impossible," she whispered. "It's true," Mark continued, holding up the report. "I had my suspicions, so I hired an investigator. The DNA test confirms it. This is my sister who I haven't seen in 15 years. Sarah looked at the papers in disbelief. "You tested my DNA? How?" "Your water glass," Mark admitted. "I'm sorry for the invasion of privacy, but I had to know for certain." Robert Taylor pushed through the crowd of guests. "Mark, maybe we should continue this conversation privately." "No," Mark said firmly. "Everyone here has witnessed how my wife treated my sister. They should hear the truth." Olivia recovered from her shock quickly. "This is obviously a con. She took this job using a fake name to get close to you and your money." "Johnson is my married name," Sarah said quietly. "My husband died 6 months ago." Grace stepped forward, holding something in her hands. "Mr. Williams, I've worked for your family since before your marriage. I recognized Sarah the moment she arrived, but wasn't certain until I found this." She handed Mark an old photo album. He opened it to find pictures of his parents, himself as a young man, and a teenage girl with the same eyes as the pregnant woman standing before him. "She has your mother's eyes," Grace said. "I should have told you sooner." The guests watched in uncomfortable silence. Some began gathering their coats, eager to leave what had become an intensely personal family drama. Mark turned to address everyone. "I apologize, but I'm going to have to ask all of you to leave. This is a family matter that requires privacy." As guests began filing out, Robert approached Sarah. "Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" Sarah nodded gratefully. The stress and humiliation had left her feeling lightheaded. Mark noticed her distress. "Let's go to my office. We need to talk." "Hey, she's not going anywhere with you alone," Olivia snapped. "For all we know, this entire thing is a setup." "Enough, Olivia," Mark said, his voice cold. "You've done enough damage tonight." As Robert helped Sarah to a nearby chair, Mark instructed the staff to help guests with their departures. Within 20 minutes, only family remained in the mansion. Mark, Sarah, Olivia, Grace, and Robert, who had refused to leave. In the sudden quiet of the emptied house, Mark knelt beside Sarah's chair. 15 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life," he said softly. "After our parents died, I let money and pride destroy our family. I lost you, and I've regretted it every day since." Sarah looked at him through tired eyes. "Why didn't you look for me?" "I did," Mark insisted. "For years. You disappeared after leaving your last foster home. I hired people to find you, but you'd changed your name after marriage. You moved constantly. I had to keep moving. I couldn't afford stable housing after Tom died." Olivia paced the room like a trapped animal. "This is absurd. She shows up pregnant and penniless, works her way into our home, and now she's miraculously your long-lost sister? How convenient. Mark stood up. Read the report yourself, Olivia. The DNA match is undeniable. So what now? Olivia demanded. You're going to let her and her baby move in, give her access to our money? This is exactly what she wanted. Sarah struggled to her feet. I needed a job. I chose this house because I wanted to see if Mark had changed, if there was anything left of the brother I once loved. I was too afraid to tell him who I was. A likely story, Olivia sneered. Grace returned with a glass of water for Sarah. Mrs. Williams, with all due respect, you've had too much to drink. Perhaps you should retire for the evening. Don't tell me what to do in my own house, Olivia shouted. It's my house, Mark corrected her. And I think Grace is right. Olivia turned to him, eyes narrowing. So you're choosing her over me? Your wife of 7 years? I'm choosing to have a conversation with my sister without your interference, Mark replied evenly. We can discuss our marriage tomorrow when you're sober? Fine, Olivia spat. Have your touching family reunion, but don't think this ends here. She stormed out of the room, heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. An uncomfortable silence fell. Robert cleared his throat. I should probably go too. No, stay, Mark said. Sarah might be more comfortable with you here, and I trust you, Robert. Grace brought tea and sandwiches. No one had eaten during the disastrous party. When did you suspect who I was? Sarah asked Mark as she sipped her tea. There was something familiar about you from the beginning, he admitted. Last week I finally recognized something in your eyes when you were singing to yourself while cleaning. That's when I contacted Daniel. I never thought you'd recognize me, Sarah said. I've changed so much. Not as much as you think. Mark opened the photo album Grace had brought. Your smile is the same. Sarah looked at the old photographs, pictures of their parents, their childhood home, holidays together before everything fell apart. I kept this hidden all these years, Grace explained. Your mother gave it to me for safekeeping before that final trip. After the accident, I didn't know when would be the right time to share it. Sarah touched a photo of their parents. I have almost nothing from our family. No pictures, no mementos, everything was lost in the shuffle between foster homes. Mark's face showed his guilt. I should have fought harder to keep you with me. I was so focused on proving myself, building the company. We were both young, Sarah said. You were 27, suddenly responsible for a rebellious 15-year-old sister, and I was horrible to you after they died. You were grieving, Mark replied. We both were, but in different ways. Robert watched their conversation with interest. So what happens now? He asked. Mark looked at Sarah's tired face and her pregnant belly. First, Sarah needs rest. She can stay in one of the guest rooms tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the details. What about Olivia? Robert asked quietly. Mark's expression hardened. That's a separate issue. One I'll deal with soon enough. Grace stood up. Let me prepare the blue room for you, Sarah. It has the most comfortable bed. Thank you, Sarah said. Then she turned to Mark. I don't expect anything from you, you know. I didn't come here for your money. I know, Mark said. But you're my sister, and that baby is my niece or nephew. Your family. That means something to me. As Grace led Sarah upstairs, Robert stayed behind with Mark. She seems genuine, Robert observed. She is, Mark confirmed. The report is thorough. There's no doubt she's my sister. He paused. Did you see how Olivia treated her tonight? Has she always been that cruel to the staff? Robert hesitated. I didn't want to interfere in your marriage, but yes. It's been a pattern for years. Most of us just tried to stay out of her way. Mark sat heavily in a chair, looking suddenly exhausted. I've been blind, Robert, to so many things. Upstairs, Sarah sank gratefully onto the bed in the blue guest room. It was larger than her entire apartment had been before Tom died. "Will you be comfortable here?" Grace asked, turning down the covers. "It's perfect," Sarah assured her. "Thank you for keeping our family album all these years." Grace patted her hand. "I always hoped you two would find each other again." As Grace turned to leave, Sarah called after her. "What do you think will happen tomorrow? With Olivia, I mean." The older woman paused in the doorway. "I've worked for your brother a long time. When Mark Williams makes up his mind about something, nothing stands in his way. And tonight, I think he finally made up his mind about several things." Sarah laid her head on the pillow, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Through the wall, she could hear Olivia's angry voice on the phone, already calling her lawyer. Morning light streamed through the windows of the blue guest room. Sarah woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. The soft bed and silk sheets were nothing like her thin mattress in the staff quarters. Then the memories of the previous night came rushing back. The humiliation at the party, the revelation of her identity, and Olivia's angry phone calls that had continued well into the night. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Sarah called. Grace entered carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning. I thought you might prefer to eat here today." "Is she still here?" Sarah asked, accepting the tray. Grace nodded. "Mrs. Williams is in the East Wing. She hasn't left her room yet, but I heard more phone calls." She hesitated. "Mr. Williams asked if you could meet him in his study when you're ready. No rush." After breakfast and a shower, Sarah made her way downstairs. The mansion felt different in daylight, less intimidating now that she was a guest rather than a maid. She found Mark's study door open. He stood when she entered. "Did you sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months," Sarah admitted, lowering herself into a leather chair. "Your guest room has an actual mattress, not just springs with a sheet." Mark winced. "I should have checked the staff accommodations. I didn't realize—" "You weren't supposed to," Sarah said. "Rich people never see how their staff lives." An uncomfortable silence fell between them. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Mark finally asked. Sarah placed her hands on her belly, gathering her thoughts. "I needed the job. After Tom died, I had nothing. No savings, mounting medical bills from his accident, and a baby on the way." She met his eyes. "But I also wanted to see if you'd changed. If there was anything left of the brother I remembered." "And what did you find?" "A man who barely looked at his staff, who let his wife treat people like dirt." Sarah's voice sharpened. "But occasionally I saw glimpses of the Mark I knew. The way you insisted on keeping me employed despite my pregnancy, how you visit Mom and Dad's graves every year with the same flowers they liked." Mark leaned forward. "I tried to find you, Sarah. For years. I sent Christmas cards to every address I could track down. They all came back. I hired investigators. I moved a lot," she acknowledged. "After I left that last foster home, I was angry at the whole world. I worked odd jobs, lived in cheap apartments. Then I met Tom at a construction site where I was temping in the office. He was kind." Her voice softened. "We had 2 good years before the accident." "I'm sorry about your husband. He fell 3 stories when a scaffold collapsed. The company had no insurance. There was barely enough money for his funeral." Outside the study, they heard raised voices. Olivia was awake. "You need to prepare yourself," Mark warned. "She's been on the phone with her lawyer all night." "I don't want your money, Mark," Sarah said firmly. "It's not about what you want. It's about what's right. You're my sister, and that baby is my niece or nephew." The study door burst open. Olivia stood there in yesterday's wrinkled party dress, her makeup smudged, but her eyes clear and angry. "Having a cozy family reunion?" she asked acidly. Mark stood up. "We're talking privately, Olivia." "In my house? Nothing is private anymore. Not since you humiliated me in front of all our friends last night. You humiliated yourself, Mark replied coldly. And it's my house, not yours. Olivia's gaze shifted to Sarah. I don't know what con you're running, but it won't work. My lawyers will fight any claim you make on the Williams fortune. I haven't made any claims, Sarah said quietly. Not yet, Olivia sneered. But that's why you're here, isn't it? Showing up conveniently pregnant and poor, playing on my husband's guilt. Robert appeared in the doorway behind Olivia. Sorry to interrupt. I came to check on everyone after last night. Perfect timing, Olivia said sarcastically. Mark's business partner can join the pity party for his long-lost sister. Robert ignored her, addressing Sarah directly. How are you feeling today? I'm okay, Sarah said. Thank you for asking. This simple exchange seemed to infuriate Olivia more. Oh, for God's sake, she was the maid yesterday. Why is everyone treating her like royalty today? Because she's my sister, Mark said firmly, and she's pregnant, and she deserves basic human decency. Olivia laughed bitterly. You always were a sucker for a sad story, Mark. That's why I handle our social circle. You're too soft. There's nothing soft about how you've been treating our staff, Mark replied. I've been blind to it for too long. Grace appeared with a tea tray, seemingly oblivious to the tension. I thought everyone might need refreshments. We don't need anything from you, Olivia snapped. Actually, Mark said, Grace has been more family to me than most people in this house. She's welcome to stay. As Grace served tea, Sarah noticed she had brought something else, a small wooden box tucked under her arm. What's that? Sarah asked. Grace placed the box on the table. Some things I've kept from your parents' house. After the accident, when everything was being packed up, I saved a few special items I thought you might want someday. Sarah opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside were her mother's pearl earrings, her father's pocket watch, and several small photographs in silver frames. You saved these for 15 years? She asked, tears forming. Grace nodded. I always hoped you two would find each other again. Olivia made a disgusted noise. How convenient that everyone has secretly known about this sister except me. I didn't know for certain, Grace corrected. I suspected, but it wasn't my place to say. Sarah lifted out a small music box. Mom's lullaby box, she whispered, opening it. A gentle melody filled the room. Mark's face showed pain and memory. She used to play that when you had nightmares. Olivia's phone rang loudly, breaking the moment. She answered it, speaking in a hushed but angry tone. Yes, she's still here. No, he's not listening to reason. Well, make them understand that anything given to her will be contested. Robert moved closer to Sarah. Don't let her intimidate you. Mark has excellent lawyers. I don't want to cause more problems, Sarah said quietly. You're not the problem here, Robert replied, just as quietly. Olivia finished her call and turned back to the group. My lawyers will be here in 1 hour. They recommend we all sign temporary non-disclosure agreements until this matter is resolved. What matter? Mark asked. There's nothing to resolve. Sarah is my sister. The matter of how much money you're planning to give her, Olivia said bluntly. I'm still your wife, Mark. Half of everything you own is legally mine, and I won't stand by while you hand it over to someone who shows up claiming to be family. I haven't asked for anything, Sarah protested. Olivia ignored her, focusing on Mark. You need to decide right now where your loyalty lies. With your wife of 7 years or this woman who appears out of nowhere? Mark stood very still, studying Olivia carefully. Is that really how you see this situation? As a choice between you and her? Of course it is. Then you don't know me at all, Mark said quietly. Family isn't something you choose against. It's what you choose for. Olivia's face flushed with anger. So you're choosing her? After everything I've done for you? Hosting your parties, managing your social connections, being the perfect corporate wife? I'm choosing to do what's right, Mark answered. Sarah needs help, and she's my sister. That doesn't have to affect you unless you make it a problem." "Everything about her is a problem," Olivia shouted, losing her composure completely. "Look at her, pregnant with no husband, no money, no education. She'll drain you dry, Mark, and that baby will just be another burden, another Williams charity case." The room fell completely silent. Even Grace froze in place. Mark's voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet. "Get out." "Excuse me?" Olivia asked, taken aback. "Get out of this room. Pack what you need for a few days and leave." "You can't throw me out of my own home." "This house is in my name only," Mark said firmly. "Check your prenuptial agreement. Section 8, Paragraph 3 specifies that the Bel Air property remains solely mine in any separation." Olivia's mouth opened in shock. "You're choosing her over me? Over a pregnant maid?" "I'm choosing basic human decency," Mark replied. "For years, I've watched you treat people like they're beneath you. I ignored it because I was busy building a company. But watching you humiliate my sister, my pregnant sister, I finally see who you really are." He walked to the door and held it open. "Your lawyers can contact mine. But right now, I want you to leave." Olivia looked around the room, at Sarah's shocked face, at Grace's quiet approval, at Robert's careful neutrality, and realized she had no allies. "This isn't over," she hissed, stalking toward the door. "Not by a long shot." After she left, silence filled the study. Sarah looked at her brother with new eyes. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Mark closed the door and turned to face his sister. "Yes, I did. For both of us." The sound of Olivia's angry footsteps echoed down the hallway as Mark closed the study door. Grace poured fresh tea for everyone, her hands steady despite the dramatic confrontation they had just witnessed. "She'll be back with her lawyers," Robert warned, accepting a cup from Grace. Mark nodded. "I know, but we have time to prepare now." He turned to Sarah. "I want to move you out of the staff quarters today. The blue guest room can be yours until we figure out something more permanent." "That's not necessary," Sarah protested. "I don't want to cause more trouble." "You're not staff anymore, Sarah. You're family." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with 15 years of separation. Grace touched Sarah's shoulder gently. "I'll help you gather your things." Within an hour, Sarah's few possessions had been moved to the guest room. As Grace helped her unpack, they heard the front door slam. Through the window, they watched Olivia throw luggage into her red sports car. "Where do you think she'll go?" Sarah asked. "Probably to her friend Catherine's house in Beverly Hills," Grace replied. "That's where she always threatens to go when she and Mr. Williams argue." "Do they argue often?" Grace folded a shirt carefully. "Not really. Mr. Williams usually gives in to whatever she wants." "Until now," Sarah observed. "Until now," Grace agreed. Downstairs, Mark's phone rang constantly. News of the Christmas party drama had already spread through their social circle. Robert stayed beside him, helping to manage the calls. "That was the Hendersons," Mark said, hanging up. "They're pulling their children's college funds from our investment portfolio." "They're minor clients," Robert assured him. "We'll be fine." "It's not about the money. It's about the reputation damage." Robert shrugged. "People love gossip. They'll find something new to talk about next week." "Olivia has a lot of powerful friends." "So do you," Robert reminded him. "And you have the truth on your side." That evening, Mark arranged for dinner to be served in the smaller family dining room rather than the formal one. Sarah came downstairs to find the table set for 4. Mark, Robert, Grace, and herself. "Grace is eating with us?" Sarah asked, surprised. "She's practically family," Mark said. "She should have been eating with me all along." During dinner, Sarah noticed how often Robert looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. His kindness seemed genuine, not just an extension of his loyalty to Mark. "Have you thought about what happens next?" Robert asked. Sarah touched her pregnant belly. "I need to find a job, a place to live." Mark put down his fork. You don't need to worry about either of those things. You can stay here. I can't just live off you, Mark. Why not? I have more money than I can spend in a lifetime. Our parents would have wanted me to take care of you. I don't need taking care of, Sarah insisted. I've been on my own since I was 17. And look where that got you, Mark said, then immediately regretted his words. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. Sarah's face hardened. Yes, it did. Not all of us had the luxury of a college education and business connections after Mom and Dad died. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Grace cleared her throat. Perhaps this conversation can wait until tomorrow. Sarah needs rest. Later that night, Mark knocked on Sarah's door. She was sitting by the window looking out at the city lights. I came to apologize, he said. What I said at dinner was cruel and unfair. But true, Sarah admitted. I made a lot of bad decisions after I left foster care. I was angry and hurt. Mark sat across from her. Tell me about those years. For hours they talked. Sarah told him about dropping out of high school, working minimum wage jobs, and moving constantly. Mark shared his struggles building the company while dealing with the guilt of losing touch with her. I checked the records at your last foster home, he confessed. They said you ran away. I did, Sarah confirmed. The Pattersons were only interested in the foster care payments. When I turned 17, I left. Where did you go? Bus station, then San Diego. I slept on the beach for a while, then found a job washing dishes. Eventually, I got my GED. Mark looked pained. I should have been there for you. We both made mistakes, Sarah said. I changed my name after I married Tom. I wanted a fresh start. As they talked into the night, a tentative bridge began to form across the 15-year gap in their relationship. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of shouting. Olivia had returned with two men in suits, presumably her lawyers. Sarah dressed quickly and went downstairs. You can't keep me out of my own house, Olivia was yelling at Mark in the foyer. The house is in my name only, Mark replied calmly. You agreed to that in the prenup. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Mr. Williams, we're prepared to file emergency motions today if you continue to deny Mrs. Williams access to her residence. File whatever you want, Mark said. The prenuptial agreement is clear. Olivia spotted Sarah on the stairs and pointed dramatically. There she is! The reason my husband has lost his mind. The second lawyer looked up at Sarah. Is this the alleged sister? There's nothing alleged about it, Mark snapped. DNA confirms it. Grace appeared from the kitchen, positioning herself protectively at the bottom of the stairs. Sarah, you should go back to your room. This stress isn't good for the baby. Sarah nodded and turned, but a sharp pain suddenly shot through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the railing. Sarah? Mark rushed to the stairs. What's wrong? I don't know, she said, her face pale. Something doesn't feel right. Robert, who had just arrived for his daily visit, immediately called for an ambulance while Mark helped Sarah to a chair. This is her fault too, Olivia said coldly, probably faking to get more sympathy. Mark turned on her furiously. Get out, now! The paramedics arrived within minutes. After a brief examination, they decided to take Sarah to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I'll meet you there, Mark promised as they loaded her into the ambulance. Your meeting with Pacific Securities is in 30 minutes, Robert reminded him. Mark didn't hesitate. Cancel it. My sister needs me. I'll handle it, Robert offered. You go with Sarah. I'll join you at the hospital later. At Cedars-Sinai, doctors monitored Sarah closely. The baby's heartbeat was stable, but Sarah's blood pressure was dangerously high. You need complete bed rest, Dr. Morris explained. The stress you're experiencing is affecting both you and your baby. Mark sat by Sarah's bedside, refusing to leave even when visiting hours ended. He used his influence and a generous donation to ensure he could stay overnight. You're missing work because of me, Sarah said weakly. Work isn't important right now, Mark replied. You and the baby are what matters." The next morning, Robert arrived with flowers and Sarah's overnight bag. "The Pacific Securities deal is secure," he told Mark quietly, "but Harrison and Company is threatening to pull out of the merger because of the family drama, as they called it." "Let them," Mark said. "If they're that easily spooked, we don't want them anyway." When Sarah was finally discharged 3 days later with strict instructions for bed rest, they returned to find the mansion in disarray. While they were gone, Olivia had returned with a court order allowing her to retrieve personal belongings. "She took more than clothes," Grace said grimly, leading them through the house. "Many valuable items are missing." In Mark's office, desk drawers hung open and papers were scattered everywhere. The safe stood open and empty. The family photos, Mark realized suddenly, the ones from Mom and Dad's house. They rushed to the library where the albums were kept. Pages had been torn out, photographs ripped to pieces. On the floor lay broken frames and shattered glass. "She destroyed them," Sarah whispered, kneeling despite her condition to pick up a torn picture of their parents. "Why would she do this?" "To hurt us," Mark said simply, "because she knows what matters." That night, as Sarah rested in her room under Grace's watchful eye, Mark and Robert sat in the study reviewing security footage from the house cameras. "There," Mark pointed. The screen showed Olivia and 2 men methodically going through the house, taking valuables and destroying photographs. "This is evidence of destruction of property," Robert said. "Your lawyers can use this." Mark nodded grimly. "Make copies. Send them to Thomas at legal right away." As Robert worked, Mark made a decision. He had allowed money and inheritance issues to separate him from Sarah 15 years ago. He wouldn't let Olivia's greed damage what family he had left. "Call Thomas directly," Mark instructed. "Tell him to file for divorce immediately. Full legal press." "Are you sure?" Robert asked. "That's going to get ugly fast." "I'm sure," Mark said firmly. "Sarah and her baby are my priority now." From her room upstairs, Sarah could hear their voices but not their words. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling her baby move. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "We have family now." The morning after Mark's decision to file for divorce, the mansion erupted with activity. Lawyers arrived carrying briefcases and looking serious. Grace kept Sarah upstairs away from the commotion. "What's happening down there?" Sarah asked, sitting in bed with her laptop. "Mr. Williams has his entire legal team here," Grace explained, bringing Sarah herbal tea. "They're preparing for the divorce proceedings." Sarah frowned. "This is moving so fast." Last week, Mark and Olivia were hosting a Christmas party, and now... "Sometimes things that seem sudden have actually been breaking for a long time," Grace said wisely. Sarah's phone buzzed with a news alert. Her stomach dropped as she read the headline. "Tech mogul's wife claims pregnant con artist infiltrated family." "Oh no," she whispered, showing the screen to Grace. Grace's face hardened. "Mrs. Williams works fast. She has friends at several magazines." Downstairs, Mark saw the same alert on his phone. He slammed it down on the table, startling his lawyers. "She's gone to the press already," he growled. Thomas Chen, his head attorney, picked up the phone and read the article. "This is actually helpful for us. She's violated the confidentiality clause in your prenuptial agreement." "What about Sarah? She's being portrayed as some kind of criminal." "We'll issue a statement with the DNA results," Thomas assured him. "But first, I need to discuss something concerning we found in the company financials." Mark leaned forward. "What is it?" "There have been unusual withdrawals from the corporate accounts over the past 2 years, small enough to stay under the radar individually, but they total over $2 million. "And you think Olivia is behind this?" Thomas nodded. "The transactions occur mainly after charity events she organized. We believe she may have been skimming donations." A knock at the door interrupted them. Robert entered with Sarah. "Sorry to interrupt," Robert said, "but Sarah has something important to show you." Mark stood quickly. "You should be resting." I couldn't rest knowing Olivia is spreading lies about me, Sarah said. She opened her laptop on the table, and I think I found something that might help. During her months working as a maid, Sarah had noticed financial papers left carelessly around Olivia's desk. With her accounting background from the construction company where she had met Tom, certain numbers had stuck in her memory. These donation amounts don't match what was reported to the charity, Sarah explained, pointing to spreadsheets she had created. I remembered seeing these figures because the math didn't add up. Thomas looked impressed. This is exactly what we needed. Evidence that she was aware of the discrepancies. There's more, Sarah continued. Olivia kept a separate notebook with what she called her personal contributions. The amounts match the missing funds exactly. Mark stared at his sister. You remembered all these figures? Sarah shrugged. Numbers always stuck with me. It's why I handled the finances at every job I've had. The lawyers immediately began incorporating this new information into their case. By that afternoon, they had enough evidence to support accusations of financial misconduct against Olivia. But Olivia wasn't going down without a fight. By evening, 3 more articles appeared online, each painting Sarah as a manipulative gold digger who had seduced her way into the Williams household. She says I pretended to be pregnant to gain sympathy, Sarah said, reading the latest story with tears in her eyes. How can she say these things? Grace snorted. The woman is desperate. No one who knows you would believe this garbage. But no one does know me, Sarah pointed out. To the world, I'm just a maid who suddenly claims to be Mark Williams' sister. The publicity forced Sarah to stay inside the mansion for her safety. Reporters gathered at the gates hoping for photos or statements. Robert visited daily, often staying late into the evening. His presence was a comfort to Sarah, who found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit. The press will get tired of this story eventually, he assured her one evening as they sat in the garden courtyard, safely hidden from view. I hope so, Sarah sighed. I feel like a prisoner here. Is it really so bad? Robert asked. The house is beautiful. Your brother adores you and… He hesitated. You have people who care about you. Sarah looked at him closely. People like you? Robert's cheeks reddened slightly. I admit I've grown quite fond of you, Sarah, though the timing is complicated. Before she could respond, Mark appeared at the doorway. Sarah, there's a situation. Olivia is outside the gates with a camera crew. They rushed inside to watch the security monitors. Olivia stood at the main entrance, speaking dramatically to a reporter. My husband has been brainwashed by this woman, she was saying. I just want access to my home and my belongings. Mark called his security team immediately. Do not open the gates under any circumstances. For 3 days, this pattern continued. Olivia made public appearances, playing the victim while Mark's lawyers gathered more evidence of her financial misconduct. Sarah became increasingly isolated, the stress affecting her health once again. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Sarah was napping when loud crashes woke her. She found Grace at her door, looking alarmed. Stay in your room and lock the door, Grace instructed. Olivia somehow got past security. From her room, Sarah could hear shouting downstairs. She called Mark immediately. Olivia broke in. She told him, Grace says she has people with her. I'm 10 minutes away, Mark said urgently. Call the police, then stay where you are. Sarah called the police, then cautiously opened her door. The sounds of destruction continued from downstairs. Unable to simply hide, she moved carefully toward the staircase. What she saw shocked her. Olivia and 3 men were systematically going through the mansion, taking valuable items and putting them in bags. One man was removing paintings from the walls. That's mine, Olivia was shouting. And that! Take the silver too, it was my grandmother's. It was a lie. Sarah knew from cleaning the house that the silver had belonged to Mark and Sarah's mother. Stop, Sarah called out without thinking. That's not yours. Olivia looked up, her face twisting with anger. Well, if it isn't the pregnant con artist herself. come to protect your new fortune." "The police are on their way," Sarah warned, one hand protectively over her belly. "By then we'll be gone," Olivia sneered, "with what's rightfully mine." Sarah noticed one of the men heading toward the study where the remaining family photos were kept. "Leave those alone," she cried, starting down the stairs. Olivia stepped forward menacingly. "You should worry more about yourself than some old pictures." The confrontation might have escalated further, but sirens wailed in the distance. Olivia's accomplices immediately grabbed their bags and headed for the door. "This isn't over," Olivia hissed as she followed them. By the time police arrived, Olivia and her crew had fled, but not before causing significant damage. Mark arrived moments later, rushing to Sarah's side. "Are you okay?" "The baby?" "We're fine," Sarah assured him, but she took more family items. The police took statements and documented the break-in. Mark's security team was questioned about how Olivia had gained access. "She had a key we didn't know about," the head of security admitted. "We're changing all locks immediately." That evening, Mark called an emergency meeting with his legal team. The break-in had crossed a line that changed their strategy completely. "We need a restraining order," Thomas advised. "The break-in gives us grounds." "Do it," Mark agreed. "And prepare the financial misconduct evidence for the prosecutor's office. I want criminal charges filed." Robert, who had rushed over after hearing about the break-in, sat beside Sarah on the couch. "Are you really okay?" he asked quietly. "You look pale." "Just tired," she admitted. "This constant stress can't be good for the baby." "Maybe you should stay somewhere else until this is resolved," Robert suggested. "Somewhere Olivia doesn't know about." "No," Mark interrupted, overhearing them. "Sarah isn't leaving. We're not letting Olivia drive us out of our own home." The next morning, Thomas arrived with good news. The judge granted the temporary restraining order. "Olivia can't come within 500 feet of the house or contact either of you." "Will it stop her?" Sarah asked. "If she violates it, she'll be arrested," Thomas explained. "And with the financial evidence we've gathered, she has a lot more to lose now." That afternoon, Mark received a call from his bank. "Mr. Williams, we've frozen the transfer you requested to the Cayman Islands." "I didn't request any transfer," Mark said, alarmed. The bank explained that someone had attempted to move $5 million from his personal accounts offshore. The signature on the authorization form matched Olivia's. "She's getting desperate," Robert observed after Mark shared the news. "This is good for our case, but bad for your security." Mark nodded grimly. "We need to end this quickly before she tries something worse." Later that day, the temporary restraining order was served to Olivia at her friend's Beverly Hills mansion. The security cameras outside captured her reaction, throwing the papers on the ground and screaming at the process server. "She knows she's losing," Thomas said, watching the footage. "People get dangerous when they're cornered." Sarah placed a hand on her belly, feeling her baby kick strongly. Despite the chaos around her, her child was growing stronger each day. Somehow, they would survive this storm. The relative calm lasted exactly 6 days. With the restraining order in place, Olivia's direct attacks stopped, though the occasional negative story still appeared in the press. Mark's security team installed a new alarm system throughout the mansion. Sarah began to relax slightly, feeling safer within the walls of her new home. Early on the morning of the 7th day, Sarah woke with a strange feeling. Something wasn't right. She sat up in bed and a sharp pain seized her abdomen. "No," she whispered, placing both hands on her belly. "It's too early." Another pain hit, stronger this time. Sarah reached for her phone and called Grace. "Something's wrong," she said when Grace answered. I think the baby might be coming." Grace rushed to Sarah's room, took one look at her pale face, and immediately called for Mark. "We need to get her to the hospital right away," Grace said when Mark appeared in the doorway. "She's having contractions." "But it's too early," Mark protested. "She still has over a month to go." Sarah cried out as another pain hit, stronger than before. "There's no time to argue," Grace said firmly. "She needs medical help now." Mark carried Sarah to his car while Grace quickly packed a small bag with essentials. The drive to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center felt endless as Sarah's contractions grew closer together. "Hold on," Mark kept saying. "We're almost there. Just hold on." In the emergency room, doctors rushed Sarah into an examination room. Dr. Patel, an experienced obstetrician, checked her quickly. "You're in premature labor," she confirmed. "We're going to try to stop it. The baby's lungs need more time to develop." Sarah was admitted and hooked up to monitors that tracked her baby's heartbeat. Medication flowed through an IV into her arm designed to slow the contractions. Mark paced the hospital room, making calls to ensure Sarah had the best medical team available. Grace sat beside Sarah, holding her hand through each painful contraction. "I called Robert," Mark told Sarah. "He's on his way with your things from home." "I'm scared," Sarah admitted, tears running down her face. "What if the baby doesn't make it?" "Don't think that way," Grace said gently. "Babies are stronger than they look." Robert arrived an hour later carrying Sarah's hospital bag and a small stuffed bear. "I thought the baby might like this," he said awkwardly, placing the bear on the bedside table. Sarah managed a weak smile. "Thank you." For 24 hours, the medication seemed to work. Sarah's contractions slowed, giving everyone hope that the baby would stay safely inside for a few more weeks. But early the next morning, her water broke. "We can't stop it now," Dr. Patel told them. "The baby is coming today." The next few hours were a blur of pain, fear, and desperate hope. Mark refused to leave the room, even when nurses suggested he step out. "I'm staying with my sister," he insisted. "I won't leave her alone again." Robert waited in the hall with Grace, his face showing the worry he tried to hide from Sarah. "She'll be okay, won't she?" he asked Grace. "Both of them?" Grace patted his hand. "All we can do is pray and be here for them." At 3:17 in the afternoon, with one final push, Sarah gave birth to a tiny baby girl weighing just 4 pounds 3 ounces. "Emma," Sarah whispered, as the doctors quickly cut the cord and whisked the infant to a waiting incubator. "Her name is Emma Grace." Unlike full-term births, there was no immediate cry, no placing of the baby on the mother's chest. Emma's underdeveloped lungs needed immediate help. A team of neonatal specialists surrounded the small incubator, attaching tiny tubes and monitors. "Is she okay?" Sarah asked weakly. "Why isn't she crying?" Dr. Patel squeezed Sarah's hand. "They're helping her breathe." Premature babies often need assistance at first. Mark stood near the incubator watching his tiny niece fight for life. Her skin was nearly translucent, her body smaller than his hand. "She's a Williams," he said quietly. "We're fighters." Emma was rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit while another team attended to Sarah. The birth had been difficult, leaving her exhausted and emotional. "When can I see her?" she asked repeatedly. "As soon as you're stable," Dr. Patel promised. That evening, Sarah was wheeled into the NICU for her first real look at Emma. The baby lay in an incubator, tubes and wires connected to her tiny body. A ventilator helped her breathe. "She's so small," Sarah whispered, placing her hand against the clear plastic. "But her heart is strong," the NICU nurse assured her. "That's the most important thing right now." For the next 3 days, Emma's condition remained critical. Sarah was discharged from the maternity ward, but refused to leave the hospital. Mark arranged for a private room near the NICU where she could rest between visits to Emma. Grace organized a schedule so someone familiar was always present. "Sarah needs support, and Emma should never be alone," she declared. Robert took the night shift, sitting beside Sarah as she kept vigil by the incubator. During these quiet hours, their connection deepened. "You don't have to stay," Sarah told him on the third night. "You must be exhausted." "I want to be here," Robert said simply, "for both of you." On the morning of the 4th day, Mark was alone with Emma when Olivia's lawyer appeared in the hospital waiting room. "Mr. Williams," the lawyer said stiffly, Mrs. Williams has asked me to present a settlement offer. Mark stared in disbelief. You came here? Now, Mrs. Williams thought you might be more reasonable, given the circumstances. The lawyer held out a thick envelope. She's prepared to agree to a quick divorce if you'll sign over 50% of your assets, as per California law. Mark took the envelope and, without opening it, tore it in half. Tell Olivia that nothing is more important than family. Not money, not business, not property. He dropped the torn papers into the trash. Now get out before I call security. That afternoon, the neonatologist had good news. Emma's oxygen levels had improved enough to remove the ventilator. She was breathing on her own. She's a fighter, Dr. Mills told Sarah. Her lungs are getting stronger every day. For the first time since the birth, Sarah felt hope replace fear. Her daughter was going to survive. On the 8th day, Emma's condition was upgraded from critical to stable. Her weight had increased slightly and her skin had begun to look less transparent. When can I hold her? Sarah asked during Dr. Mills's morning rounds. The doctor smiled. Today, if her vital signs remain stable. Skin-to-skin contact is excellent for premature babies. That afternoon, a nurse carefully lifted Emma from the incubator and placed her on Sarah's bare chest, covering them both with a warm blanket. The tiny baby, still connected to monitors, settled against her mother's skin. "Hello, Emma," Sarah whispered, tears flowing freely. "I've been waiting so long to hold you." Mark watched from the doorway, his own eyes wet with emotion. Grace arrived with fresh clothes for Sarah and stood beside Mark. "Your mother would be so proud right now," she said softly, "of both her children." Robert came later, carrying food for everyone. He stopped short when he saw Sarah holding Emma. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Would you like to hold her next?" Sarah asked. The surprise and joy on Robert's face was answer enough. After Sarah's turn, the nurse helped place Emma against Mark's chest. The tough businessman melted completely as he held his tiny niece. "I promise, I'll always protect you," he whispered to Emma. Grace took her turn next, cradling Emma with the experienced hands of a woman who had held many babies in her lifetime. "You look just like your mother did," she told the infant. "Same little nose." Finally, it was Robert's turn. He looked terrified as the nurse placed Emma in his arms. "Support her head just like that," the nurse instructed. "You're doing fine." Robert gazed down at Emma with such tenderness that Sarah felt her heart skip. The expression on his face was one of pure love. As Emma continued to grow stronger, Sarah began her own physical recovery. The emotional adjustment to motherhood was easier than she expected. Despite the difficult circumstances, Sarah felt a deep connection to her daughter. On the 14th day after Emma's birth, Thomas Chen visited the hospital with news. "We've uncovered something significant," he told Mark in the hallway outside Sarah's room. "Olivia had a separate bank account we didn't know about. She's been transferring company funds into it for years." "How much?" Mark asked. "Nearly $3 million, Thomas replied. "This changes everything legally. It's not just divorce now, it's fraud." Mark glanced through the window at Sarah, who was reading a story to Emma in her incubator. "Handle it," he told Thomas. "Whatever needs to be done, but keep Sarah's name out of it completely. She and Emma have been through enough." Later that evening, as Sarah prepared to spend another night at the hospital, Mark shared the news about Olivia. "The divorce will move forward quickly now," he explained. "Thomas thinks she'll settle quietly to avoid fraud charges." "I just want it to be over," Sarah said, looking at Emma sleeping in her incubator. "I want to bring Emma home and start our new life." Mark squeezed her hand. "Soon. Very soon." 3 weeks after Emma's birth, the doctors finally delivered the news Sarah had been waiting for. "Her lungs are strong enough now," Dr. Mills said, smiling at the tiny baby who had gained almost 2 pounds since birth. "You can take her home tomorrow." Sarah burst into tears of joy. She had spent every day at the hospital, watching her daughter grow stronger. Mark had visited daily, often bringing work with him to stay longer. "Really? We can go home?" Sarah asked, hardly believing it. "Emma will need regular checkups and special care," Dr. Mills cautioned. "But she's a fighter. She's ready for the next step." Sarah immediately called Mark with the good news. Instead of the excited response she expected, there was a brief silence. "Mark? Did you hear me? Emma can come home tomorrow." "That's wonderful," he said finally. "But I need you to wait one more day. There's something I need to finish at the house first." "What could be more important than bringing Emma home?" Sarah asked, confused. "Trust me," Mark replied. "Just one more day. Robert will explain everything when he comes tonight." That evening, Robert arrived at the hospital carrying pink roses for Sarah and a tiny stuffed elephant for Emma. "What's going on at the house?" Sarah demanded. Mark was acting strange on the phone. Robert smiled mysteriously. "He wants it to be a surprise, but I can tell you he's implemented a 3-part plan this week." "What kind of plan?" "First," Robert explained, "he filed a countersuit against Olivia using the evidence of financial misconduct. Second, he announced a restructuring of Williams' security." "What kind of restructuring?" Sarah asked. "He promoted me to co-CEO," Robert said, looking both proud and slightly embarrassed. "He says he wants more time with family now." Sarah smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Robert. You deserve it." "The third part of his plan is what's happening at the house right now," Robert continued. "And that's the surprise." The next morning, Mark called with instructions. "Robert will pick you and Emma up tomorrow at 10 o'clock. The doctors have already cleared everything with me." "But what's going on?" Sarah pressed. "You'll see," was all Mark would say. Sarah spent her final day at the hospital packing the many gifts that had accumulated in her room. The NICU nurses had grown attached to Emma and came by to say goodbye. "She's our little miracle," Nurse Jenkins said, giving the baby a gentle kiss on the forehead. "Bring her back to visit us." The following morning, Robert arrived precisely at 10 o'clock. A brand new car seat was already installed in the back of his car. "When did you get that?" Sarah asked, impressed. "Yesterday," Robert admitted. "I watched 3 different instructional videos to make sure I installed it correctly." The hospital staff helped Sarah secure Emma in her car seat. The baby, now weighing just over 6 pounds, looked tiny but healthy, her skin no longer transparent but a healthy pink. As they drove away from Cedars-Sinai, Sarah felt both excited and nervous. "I've never taken care of a baby on my own before." "You won't be on your own," Robert assured her. "You have Mark, Grace, and—" He hesitated, then added softly, "and me, if you want." Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you for everything." When they turned into the long driveway of the Williams mansion, Sarah gasped. A large banner hung across the front entrance. "Welcome home, Emma!" "What in the world?" she whispered. As Robert parked, the front door opened. Mark, Grace, and the entire household staff stood waiting. They applauded as Robert helped Sarah carry Emma from the car. "Welcome home," Mark said, hugging his sister carefully while peering down at his niece. "Both of you." Grace wiped tears from her eyes. "The youngest Williams has arrived at last." Sarah was overwhelmed by the reception. The staff members she had worked alongside just weeks earlier now greeted her as family, cooing over Emma and offering congratulations. "I don't understand," Sarah said to Mark. "What's all this about?" "Come with me," he replied, leading her into the house. Sarah gasped again as she entered. The mansion had been transformed. Gone were many of the cold, formal touches Olivia had insisted upon. In their place were warmer colors and more comfortable furniture. "This is just the beginning of the changes," Mark explained, "but I wanted to show you the most important one." He led her up the stairs to the east wing of the house. When he opened the double doors at the end of the hallway, Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. The entire wing had been converted into a beautiful apartment. There was a living room, small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. The larger bedroom was clearly Sarah's, decorated in soft blues she had once mentioned she liked. The second bedroom took her breath away. It was a nursery, painted in gentle yellows with white furniture. A beautiful white crib stood in the center of the room, with a rocking chair beside it. On the wall hung a hand-painted mural of a garden scene. "Mark," she whispered, "how did you do all this so quickly?" "Money helps," he admitted, "but mostly it was grace." She remembered how Mom decorated our nursery when you were born. She helped the designers recreate it. Sarah turned to Grace, who stood in the doorway smiling. "It's almost exactly like your nursery was," Grace confirmed. "Your mother would be so happy to see this room used for her granddaughter." Sarah carefully placed Emma in the crib for the first time. The baby stretched and yawned, completely unaware of the significance of the moment. "There's more to tell you," Mark said as they moved to the living room. "The divorce is being finalized." Olivia tried one last desperate move this week. "What did she do?" Sarah asked. "She scheduled a press conference claiming she had evidence I was mentally unstable and being manipulated by you." Robert, who had joined them, continued the story. "Mark went to see her the night before the press conference. He brought all the evidence of her financial fraud. I offered her a settlement," Mark explained. "She drops all claims in exchange for a modest but fair financial package and her public silence." "Did she agree?" Sarah asked. "Not at first," Mark said. "She threatened to reveal everything to the press, but when I showed her the complete evidence, including testimonials from multiple staff members about her behavior, she realized she might face criminal charges." "She signed the agreement last night," Robert added. "That's why Mark wanted to wait an extra day before bringing Emma home. He wanted to make sure Olivia couldn't cause any more trouble." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "So it's really over?" "The Olivia chapter is closed," Mark confirmed. "Now we focus on the future." Later that evening, after Emma had been fed and settled in her new crib, Sarah sat in the rocking chair watching her daughter sleep. There was a soft knock at the nursery door. "May I come in?" Robert asked quietly. "Of course," Sarah replied. Robert entered and stood beside the crib, looking down at Emma with obvious affection. "She looks peaceful," he observed. "She does," Sarah agreed. "For the first time, I feel like we're really safe." Robert hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Sarah, I know this might seem fast and there's been so much happening in your life, but I wanted you to know that my feelings for you have grown beyond friendship." Sarah looked up at him, surprised by his directness. "I'm not asking for anything," he continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here for both of you." Before Sarah could respond, Emma stirred and began to fuss. Robert stepped back. "Think about it," he said softly. "There's no rush." After he left, Sarah lifted Emma from the crib and held her close. "What do you think, little one? Is there room in our new life for someone else?" Emma blinked sleepily, offering no opinion on the matter. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Mark already in the kitchen of her new apartment making coffee. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "I used my key. I wanted to talk to you about something." "More surprises?" Sarah asked, accepting a cup gratefully. "Just one more," Mark replied. "I've been thinking about the company." "Williams Security?" Sarah asked. "What about it?" "I want to change the name," Mark said. "I'm going to the courthouse today to file the paperwork. From now on, it will be Williams Family Security." Sarah looked at her brother with surprise. "Family? That's what matters most," Mark said simply, "and I want everyone to know it." As they sat together in the morning light, Emma's soft cries came through the baby monitor. Sarah rose to get her daughter. "Family," she repeated softly. "I like the sound of that." 6 weeks passed in a blur of baby bottles, diaper changes, and sleepless nights. The Williams mansion settled into a new rhythm centered around Emma's needs. Sarah gradually adjusted to motherhood, gaining confidence with each day. The shadows under her eyes spoke of interrupted sleep, but her smile was more genuine than it had been in years. Mark had officially changed the company name to Williams Family Security. The new logo appeared on everything from letterhead to the sign outside their corporate headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. The business world noticed the change, with several financial magazines speculating about the reasons behind it. One sunny morning, Sarah sat on her apartment's small balcony, cradling Emma against her shoulder. At 6 weeks old, the baby had filled out considerably. Her once thin limbs were now chubby, and her cheeks had adorable dimples when she yawned. Grace knocked softly on the open door. "Good morning. Is there room for one more out there?" "Always," Sarah replied, shifting to make space. Grace sat down, immediately reaching for the baby. "Let me hold my girl while you enjoy your coffee." Sarah gratefully handed Emma over. "She was up 3 times last night. I'm running on caffeine and love." "You're doing wonderfully," Grace assured her. "Most new mothers don't have to recover from such a difficult birth." Below them in the garden, Mark and Robert walked together, deep in conversation. Both men wore casual clothes rather than their usual business suits. "They're spending more time here," Sarah observed. "The co-CEO arrangement seems to be working," Grace replied. "Mark is home by 6 most evenings now." Sarah watched the two men, noticing how Robert glanced up toward her balcony. He waved when he spotted her. "Robert comes by even when Mark isn't here," Grace said carefully. "He brings dinner sometimes," Sarah admitted. "And he's great with Emma." Grace nodded knowingly but said nothing more. Later that day, Sarah ventured into Mark's home office while Emma napped. He looked up from his computer, surprised. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Emma's sleeping," Sarah explained. "I wanted to ask you something." Mark gestured to a chair. "What's on your mind?" Sarah sat down, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking about what happens next. With me, I mean." "You don't need to worry about that," Mark assured her. "You and Emma have a home here for as long as you want." "That's not what I meant," Sarah clarified. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I need purpose beyond being Emma's mother. I need to contribute something." Mark studied his sister thoughtfully. "What do you have in mind?" "I noticed some irregularities in the monthly expense reports Grace showed me yesterday," Sarah explained. "Nothing serious, just inefficiencies in how the household accounts are managed." "You've been looking at the expense reports?" Mark asked, surprised. Sarah shrugged. "Numbers help me relax." "Weird, I know." Mark laughed. "Not weird at all. I was just thinking about hiring a new financial manager for the household accounts. The person Olivia used was questionable." "I could do it," Sarah offered, "at least temporarily. I managed all the finances at the construction company where I worked with Tom." Mark opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "Actually, I have something else in mind. Take a look at this." The folder contained plans for a charitable foundation called the Emma Grace Foundation. "What is this?" Sarah asked, scanning the documents. "Something I've been working on," Mark explained. "A foundation to help single parents and separated siblings stay together through hard times." He paused. "I thought you might want to run it." Sarah looked up in surprise. "Me? But I don't have the experience or education for something like this." "You have the most important qualification," Mark said. "You lived it. You know what these families need." Sarah was speechless. "Think about it," Mark encouraged. "In the meantime, I would appreciate your help reviewing these financial reports. Robert mentioned you have quite a talent with numbers." Later that week, Sarah began working part-time while Emma napped. She set up a small desk in her living room where she could watch the baby monitor while reviewing company documents. The work gave her a sense of purpose beyond motherhood and helped rebuild her self-worth. One evening, Mark found her surrounded by spreadsheets while Emma slept in a bassinet nearby. You should be resting when she sleeps, he scolded gently. This is relaxing for me, Sarah insisted. Besides, I found 3 accounting errors already. You're paying twice for the same security service at 2 different properties. Mark shook his head in amazement. You really do have a gift for this. Sarah smiled. Tom used to say the same thing. He was terrible with money, but he trusted me completely with our finances. At the mention of her late husband, Mark sat down. You rarely talk about him. It's still hard, Sarah admitted, but getting easier. What was he like? Mark asked. For the next hour, Sarah shared stories about Tom, how they met, their small wedding, their dreams for the future. Mark listened attentively, learning about the brother-in-law he would never meet. He would have loved Emma, Sarah concluded, wiping away tears. I wish I could have known him, Mark said sincerely. The conversation opened a door between the siblings. Over the following days, they began sharing more of their separate pasts. One evening in the garden, Mark finally told Sarah the full story of his grief after their parents' death. I was completely lost, he admitted. The company was just starting to succeed, and suddenly I was responsible for everything. The business, the house, a teenage sister. I didn't make it easy for you, Sarah acknowledged. I was so angry at the world. I handled it badly, Mark said. I focused on work because it was easier than dealing with emotions. By the time I realized my mistake, you were gone. Where did you look for me? Sarah asked. Mark described his failed attempts to locate her over the years. The private investigators, the returned letters, the dead ends. I even went back to that last foster home myself, he revealed. The Pattersons had no idea where you'd gone. I was homeless for a while after that, Sarah admitted quietly. I slept in shelters or on friends' couches. I was too proud to reach out to you. Mark's face showed his pain. I should have tried harder. We both made mistakes, Sarah said, reaching for his hand. But we're here now. As spring arrived in Bel Air, the gardens of the Williams mansion bloomed with new life. Grace spent hours teaching Sarah her mother's favorite recipes, telling stories about the Williams family history that Sarah had never heard. Your mother made the best apple pie in California, Grace recalled one afternoon. She refused to write down the recipe, said it had to be learned by feeling. I wish I remembered more about her, Sarah said wistfully. You have her eyes, Grace said, and her stubborn streak. Mark has your father's business mind, but you have your mother's heart. Robert's visits became more frequent. He often arrived after work hours, sometimes bringing dinner or simply spending time with Sarah and Emma. His affection for the baby was obvious to everyone. He's falling for both of you, Grace observed after Robert left one evening. Sarah blushed. It's complicated. I'm still grieving Tom in many ways. The heart has room for many loves, Grace said wisely. Different, but all real. One Saturday morning in early April, Mark knocked on Sarah's door earlier than usual. I want to show you something, he said when she answered. He led her to the rose garden behind the mansion. A small stone bench had been placed near the center, surrounded by blooming roses. What is this? Sarah asked. Mark pulled something from his pocket, a small silver urn divided into 2 sections. Mom and Dad's ashes, he explained. I've kept them all these years, waiting for the right moment. He paused. I thought maybe we could scatter them here, together. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You saved them for me? They should be somewhere beautiful, Mark said. Somewhere we can both visit them. That afternoon, with only Grace as witness, the Williams siblings held a private ceremony in the rose garden. They took turns, scattering the ashes among the flowers their mother had loved so much. They're home now, Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. Just like we are. As they walked back to the house, Sarah carrying Emma, she felt a weight lift from her heart. The broken family was healing, one day at a time. Mark, she said, stopping at the door, I've decided to accept your offer. I want to run the Emma Grace Foundation. Mark smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Inside, Robert waited with lunch prepared. As he took Emma from Sarah's arms, the baby rewarded him with her first real smile. "She smiled at me!" Robert exclaimed, his face lighting up with joy. Sarah and Mark exchanged knowing glances. Their family circle was expanding in unexpected but welcome ways. Emma's first smile at Robert marked the beginning of many milestones over the months that followed. She learned to roll over, sit up, and crawl. Her first word, "Mama," came at 7 months, followed closely by something that sounded like "Unka" when Mark entered the room. As December approached again, the Williams mansion buzzed with preparations very different from the previous year. Sarah stood in the main hall directing volunteers where to place tables and chairs. "The food station needs to be closer to the kitchen," she explained to a young man in a Santa hat. "Many of our guests will have children with them." Emma sat in a playpen nearby, now a healthy 1-year-old with chubby cheeks and a full head of dark curls. She squealed with delight as Mark entered carrying a small Christmas tree. "What do you think, Emma?" he asked, setting it down beside her. "Is this one good enough for your first real Christmas?" "Tree!" Emma exclaimed, one of her newest words. Sarah smiled at her brother. "I still can't believe we're hosting 75 people tomorrow." "A very different 75 from last year," Mark pointed out. Indeed, the guest list for the first annual Williams Family and Friends Christmas celebration included volunteers from local homeless shelters, families from Emma's pediatric clinic, and the mansion staff with their own families. Every guest represented the values Mark and Sarah now prioritized. Grace appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "The pies are in the oven," Robert just called. "He's picking up the extra chairs now." Over the year, Robert had become a permanent fixture in their lives. His relationship with Sarah had grown slowly but steadily, beginning with shared work on the foundation and evening visits with Emma. "Is everything ready for tomorrow?" Mark asked. Sarah nodded. "The foundation families arrive at 4, the shelter volunteers at 4:30. Staff and their families can come any time." The Emma Grace Foundation had flourished under Sarah's leadership. In its first year, the charity had helped 15 families stay together through financial hardships. 3 separated siblings had been reunited through their family location program. "I invited Dr. Morris and the NICU nurses," Sarah added. "They want to see how big Emma has grown." Mark checked his watch. "I need to pick up the banner from the printer." "Can you review the final guest count with Grace?" After Mark left, Grace and Sarah sat down with the guest list. 73 confirmed, Grace noted. Plus us makes 77. "Last year I was serving these people drinks," Sarah said quietly. "Now I'm hosting them as equals." Grace patted her hand. "Life changes quickly sometimes." That evening, Robert arrived for dinner with a small gift bag. "This is for tomorrow," he explained, looking slightly nervous as he handed it to Sarah. "But I wanted to give it to you privately first." Inside was a small jewelry box. Sarah opened it to find a delicate silver locket. "Robert," she breathed, "it's beautiful." "Open it," he urged. Inside the locket was a tiny photo of Emma on one side. The other side held a picture of Tom, Sarah's late husband. "I found the photo in your old things," Robert explained. "I thought Emma should have a way to know her father, and you should have a way to keep them both close to your heart." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." Robert helped her put it on, his fingers brushing her neck. "Sarah, I know we've been taking things very slowly this year. I've respected your need to heal and focus on Emma." "You've been incredibly patient," Sarah acknowledged. "I love Emma," Robert said simply. "And I love you. I'm not asking for any decisions now, but I wanted you to know how I feel before the new year begins." Sarah touched the locket at her throat. "Tom will always be Emma's father and a part of my heart. But you've shown me that it's possible to find love again." Their first kiss was gentle and brief, interrupted by Emma's babbling from her high chair. But it was a beginning. Christmas Eve arrived with unusual weather for Los Angeles, dark clouds threatening rain. The mansion was transformed with simple decorations and warm lights. A large banner hung in the entrance, "Welcome friends and family." Guests began arriving promptly at 4 o'clock. Each was greeted personally by Mark or Sarah. Emma, dressed in a red velvet dress, charmed everyone from her perch in Grace's arms. "She's so big now," exclaimed Nurse Jenkins from the NICU. "I can't believe this is the same tiny baby we cared for." Families who had received help from the foundation shared their stories with other guests. Children played together in spaces that had once been off-limits when Olivia ruled the house. At 6 o'clock, Mark called for everyone's attention. The room quieted as he stood by the fireplace. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "1 year ago in this very room, my life changed forever when I recognized my long-lost sister." He smiled at Sarah. "That night taught me what matters most. Not wealth or status, but family, and treating everyone with dignity." Sarah stood beside him, holding Emma. "The Emma Grace Foundation exists because of that night," she added. "Every family we help, every child who gets to stay with their siblings during hard times, it all started here." "We wanted to celebrate Christmas with the people who truly matter," Mark continued. "The helpers, the healers, those who've faced hardships with courage, and those who give their time to others." Dinner was served buffet style, with everyone finding places at tables throughout the first floor. The formal dining room had been transformed into a children's area with small tables and activities. After dinner, Sarah surprised everyone by standing near the piano. "Last year in this room, I was forced to sing Silent Night while people laughed," she said, her voice steady. "Tonight I'd like to sing it again, but this time I hope you'll join me." As Sarah began the first verse, her clear voice filled the room. But unlike last year, no one laughed. Instead, voices gradually joined hers until the entire gathering was singing together. "Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright." Mark watched his sister with pride, remembering the terrified, humiliated maid she had been a year ago. Now she stood confident and strong, Emma on her hip, leading their guests in song. When the music ended, the celebration continued with dessert and coffee. As the evening progressed, something remarkable happened outside. Snow began to fall, a rare occurrence in Los Angeles. "Snow!" a child shouted, pointing at the windows. Guests rushed to look, amazed by the sight of large white flakes drifting down. "It hasn't snowed here since I was a child," Grace said in wonder. As the clock approached midnight, guests began departing with warm thanks and holiday wishes. When the last visitor had gone, the core family gathered in the library where a fire burned cheerfully. "Time for family gifts," Mark announced, bringing out several wrapped packages. Grace received a deed to the guest cottage, making her residence permanent. "Now you can't ever retire," Mark joked, hugging the woman who had become like a mother to them all. Sarah gave Mark a framed photograph of him holding Emma the day she came home from the hospital. "To remind you what matters most," she said softly. Mark's gift to Sarah was their mother's restored locket, now containing photos of their parents. "So Emma will know all her grandparents," he explained. Robert waited until the others had exchanged gifts before asking Sarah to join him on the terrace. Despite the cold, they stepped outside where snow continued to fall gently. "I have something to ask you," Robert said, his breath visible in the cold air. "Not a proposal, not yet, but a promise." He took her hands in his. "Sarah, I want to be part of your life, yours and Emma's, at whatever pace feels right to you." Sarah looked up at the snow falling around them. "I never expected to find love again," she said quietly, "or my brother, or this life we're building." "Is that a yes?" Robert asked hopefully. Sarah's answer was a kiss, gentle but full of promise. As midnight struck on the grandfather clock inside, the core family gathered once more by the fireplace. Emma had fallen asleep in Grace's arms, exhausted from the excitement. "I think we should make a wish for the new year," Mark suggested, "something to look forward to." One by one, they shared their wishes, not for wealth or success, but for health, happiness, and continued family bonds. Sarah was the last to speak. She looked around at her brother, her daughter, Grace, and Robert, the family formed through both blood and choice. "My wish is simple," she said, "that we remember this moment and how far we've come, and that we never forget what truly matters." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the Williams mansion in a blanket of white, washing away the past and making everything new again. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.